LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has been a big draw in this month for the channel. Starting back in the beginning of the month, we spent the first few days following release streaming the entire story, and have played around on a few of the different planets and even ranked all of the levels of each trilogy. I've had a hard time really putting my thoughts on the game into words through all of this, and so finally I decided to sit down and really take some time to pull this game apart and see what the good, the bad, and the blocky details are. By this point, I'm sure most people have already made their decisions on whether or not this game seems worth adding to their libraries, but for those that haven't, hopefully this is helpful. And for those of us who have played through this game, hopefully we can use this as a way to get our thoughts together and see what everyone else felt about the newest entry into the LEGO Games franchise. One of the major issues faced by nearly every game released in the past few years is these games often get announced years before they're actually ready for their release. While I'm sure things like the COVID-19 pandemic certainly threw a kink in the developer's plan, the long window between the 2019 announcement to the 2022 release date certainly got people hyped. While hype in itself isn't a bad thing, it does cause many to begin theorizing on what will be in the game, and the way certain things will be handled. The more time people have, the higher the expectations, and the wider the gap the game has to fill upon release to reach what people are hoping and expecting. Something I wanted to bring up early into this was a common feeling that I had playing the game that I think may relate to this issue. I couldn't help but feel whenever playing the Skywalker Saga that something was missing from the overall experience, yet I could never truly place my finger on what exactly that was. That's not something I'm looking to hold against the actual game itself, but I know from talking to people and seeing some other reviews on the game already, I wasn't completely alone in this feeling. The handling of the Skywalker Saga's story was a huge hit and miss going back and forth across levels and episodes in the series. One of the things mentioned in both my level ranking videos and the live streams themselves was my confusion over some of the level choices. While I understand that some of the decisions that were made were to avoid rehashing levels and events already covered by the previous LEGO Star Wars games, some of these levels felt like filler content in a game that already had a good deal of story butchering. LEGO has always cut corners with the overall stories of their games, but prior to this game, I feel they always did a great job of choosing and covering the important events in each film that they adapt. Unfortunately, I just don't feel the same could be said for all of the Skywalker Saga. For example, Anakin and Obi-Wan's infiltration on the Invisible Hand absolutely could have been longer, and even if they were trying to keep their levels short and simple, I feel they easily could have cut the weird hallway puzzles to allow players to play the bridge battle, or do a puzzle for the elevator scene. There was a lot of cool, eventful moments that would have made for great playable moments that were reduced to quick cutscenes, such as Finn and Poe's escape flight from the First Order at the beginning of The Force Awakens, and Anakin's attack on the Tusken Raiders and Attack of the Clones. I started getting used to it as the game went on, but there was a good deal of points where players would simply travel between point A and point B, only to get a quick story cutscene. This was something I noticed being particularly painful during the prequel trilogy, as just about each film within that trilogy had various moments where players would do nothing more than run between the main Coruscant location, as well as the Senate building and Jedi Temple, to play through 3 or 4 cutscenes and nothing else. Now in fairness, some of these story issues faced in the game easily falls on the shoulders of the movies themselves. Funnily enough, the episodes that I felt were more painful to get through were episodes 1, 2, 8, and 9, which coincidentally are the 4 Star Wars movies I will never watch again. It worked out pretty well for me that I started the game with the prequels, as my awe with the game was able to overtake the mundaneness of the first 2 episodes, but my annoyance certainly bled into the final stream where I had to cover the events of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Of the 3 trilogies in the game, the original trilogy definitely seemed to get the best treatment, and there's certainly no guessing as to why. Outside of a single level, there weren't any from the original trilogy that I really disliked, and I felt they came up with some cool events for players to enjoy. Do I think the story handling of the Skywalker Saga was bad? Absolutely not. I found myself enjoying the game far more often than disliking it, but I don't think there's any denying that certain things could have been handled way better. Some of the level choices were lackluster and ridiculous. They omitted a good number of playable events, opting to instead brush through them in a quick and sometimes clunky cutscene. And certain episodes seem to jump through the story so fast that you'd think you'd have taken a quick 15-minute nap and missed something. Let's be honest, this is just about the most important part of just about any LEGO game nowadays. This game gives us 24 different explorable planets, as well as 5 capital ships to explore as well. There's also nearly 400 different characters in the game. though we're going to get into this in just a moment, and 69 different ships and 45 microships. The planets you can explore range and vary greatly. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I feel I should make it clear that this video isn't meant to shit on anyone. This is all my opinion, and just because I may end up disliking a planet, level, or character that you do, doesn't mean anything on you as a person. I feel like this should go without saying, but this is YouTube we're on. But hey, I mean, it could be Twitter. There seem to be very differing approaches as to what each planet would focus on and allow the players to see and do. Planets like Geonosis and Crate felt sort of barren and boring, and most of my time here was just trying to collect what was there and get out. There were also some weirder planets like Bespin, where I liked the overall design of the map, but was disappointed by its severe lack of movie locations. And then there were planets like Tatooine and Coruscant, which were great maps to explore and hang out on, and included tons of movie and show locations for fans to visit. To the developers' credit, the good certainly outweighed the bad, but even so, there were certainly some bad planets in there that stick out in my mind. Alright, let's get this over with. We all knew this was going to get mentioned. The free roam characters and the lack of character creation. Character customizer was sorely missed in this game. Having been a staple of the LEGO game series since LEGO Star Wars the original trilogy, it was upsetting to hear this feature wouldn't be making it into the latest LEGO game. Seeing the amount of fan backlash that followed online, I think it's safe to say that's a decision TT Games won't be repeating anytime soon. I don't want to rant or bitch about this too much, as I feel this topic and people's feelings about it have been thoroughly covered already. So what about the 400-ish playable characters already in the game? Clearly they have to make up for it, right? Personally, no. But I am going to be honest here, I'm not a Star Wars fan. I grew up watching the prequel trilogies, but Star Wars was a very short phase in my nerdy life. It was just one of those things that I ended up outgrowing my affection for shortly after getting into high school. Star Wars has purely become a bit of a nostalgia boost for me, getting to relive the movies and games from my childhood. That being said, as someone that hasn't watched any sort of Star Wars content outside the movies, a few episodes of Clone Wars from when I'd visit my younger cousin who loved the show, and The Mandalorian, I know very little about the overall world, lore, and characters in the Star Wars universe. To the point where there are certain bounty hunters and rebels you get to help and unlock in the world that I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you whether they were actual Star Wars characters or just original creations for the game. Being honest, of the 400 characters in the game, I likely won't end up touching more than 100 of them before I wind up deleting the game from my hard drive to make room for something else. I will say though, a lot of the ships are really cool, and I've enjoyed flying around in a few of the different ones, including the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian. There really isn't too much to say about the free play system in the game. The minikit system we know and love is back. Instead of the normal 10, we're grabbing only 5. They've also added a new level challenge system, which I've actually been a huge fan of. I've only had 2 issues with it. The first being more so a glitch where certain challenges wouldn't actually track while in free play and force me to play them again in story. However, not everyone seemed to run into these issues, but I did find some similar cases on certain missions while checking forums. The real issue though is the way the challenges are presented. The game doesn't actually tell you what the challenges are that you need to complete. You just sort of have to guess. For the first story playthrough, I'd understand this process, but the fact that you don't at least get the requirements for the challenge after that is odd to me. The game does offer the ability to pay 30,000 stubs per challenge to see the requirement, but this just feels stupid to me. And some of these challenges are far from the natural things you'd be doing while playing the level, so the thought process there is a bit lost on me. My biggest free play complaint though comes in the form of 2 of the biggest pet peeves I have with LEGO games free play. The first is the game has the annoying tendency to switch out your character in certain levels for the story character. It's not a huge deal, but something that can get annoying when it happens repeatedly, like in the final mission of Attack of the Clones, where every time Dooku turns out the lights, the player characters are switched back to the story variants of Anakin and Obi-Wan. There's also certain levels where you get locked in as a character and can't change. The final boss fight of Episode 6, where Luke and Vader fight, locks players in as Luke and won't allow you to change until after Vader is defeated. Now, these do tend to seem locked to certain segments of the game, and like I said, it's not a huge deal, but it's still something that at this point, I was kinda hoping LEGO had moved past some of these more annoying tendencies. It's weird to think that a LEGO game review could even talk about gameplay considering how formula it used to be. However, this game's new mechanics were all welcome additions. The new boss systems, particularly the way the game handled lightsaber duels, were all so well done. The first battle against Maul blew me away, and there were certain fights, such as Anakin vs. Obi-Wan, Luke vs. Vader on Bespin, and Rey vs. Kylo on the Death Star 2 runes that just went above and beyond in their fights. Adding in the third-person shooter mechanics for the hero and villain characters added so many new player options through the game, and allowed for easy switching between ranged and melee combat. I did like the upgrade system, but if I'm being honest, I'm not so sure I fully understood the need for so many different classes. I get they wanted to do it and make things unique to the Star Wars universe, but outside of just certain characters having an extra gadget others didn't, a lot of them felt the same. As an aesthetic thing, it's cool, but I'm not sure all the classes felt that functionally different in the end, at least not in my eyes. There's definitely been a lot I wanted to say about this game. For the most part, I feel I've covered all the bases for what I wanted to touch upon, and have taken a few days to look over all this. Ultimately, I was still happy with this game, and feel that if my love for Star Wars matched my love for things like Marvel and DC, I likely would have enjoyed it far more. As a huge LEGO game fan, it was an enjoyable playthrough. As I mentioned earlier, I really did miss the character creator in this game, and I'm really hoping that the next LEGO game brings it back and sticks with it. Honestly, if you're a LEGO game fan, you'll have fun with this game. If you're a Star Wars fan, it'll be a great game for your collection, and if you happen to be a fan of both, you'll love it. Are there issues with it? Absolutely. Is it the best LEGO game yet? I honestly am not really so sure I would go that far. Is it the direction, though, that these games needed to survive? I wouldn't say that they need them to survive, but I am glad that TT made this leap. In the end, much like the original LEGO Star Wars game, I feel this game had to walk so future LEGO games could run. This new system and the new gameplay mechanics are certainly going to help push LEGO into the modern gaming age. And with some more polish, and taking into account some of the criticisms we've had from this one, I'm sure it won't be long until TT has this LEGO game formula as polished as their last. And I personally found this to be a lot less buggy than the previous games, so good on them. Though I will say, while it is a lot less, there are still some bug and crash issues. So finally, those are my thoughts on the game. I did my best to really try and put them together, as I've just had so many different thoughts and opinions on this game since its release. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts and experiences as well. Did the game live up to your expectations, or even exceed them? What were things you wanted that didn't make it, or things you never thought you'd care about that you wouldn't want them to remove in future installments? I appreciate all your support, and have had fun reading and interacting with you guys on the ranking videos. In order to keep with our LEGO theme, next weekend we're going to talk a little bit about some of the possible franchises that may be used for the next LEGO game release, so be sure to come around then so we can all discuss that together.